Hey there guys, PC Guy here, and this is going to be a video about kind of giving you a few hints and tips about how to save some money on your PC, either spending less on it or allocating your money a bit easier and more effectively to get the performance you want out of it. It's not going to be a build list. I'm not going to give you a list of parts for price per or that, just kind of some general headers of, let's call it the top 5 of things that people waste money when they are building their PC, that they should save it and apply it somewhere else. First point is probably the biggest one and might be an unpopular opinion for some, which is the bling. Everyone loves the bling, the RGB fans, the nice blingy stuff that lights up, and all the nice features and nice looking things like glass windows on the side of your cases, that sort of thing. That's all things that are pretty good if you are an enthusiast and if you have the budget for it, but you can easily get carried away and spend let's say $200-300 in fans, and when you have $1,000 or something price point, then that is going to cut it into the performance of your system, and you could easily get a better processor, a better graphics card, a bigger storage, you name it, and instead you just blew a third of your budget in fans that you are not really going to see any impact from, because even if they are better quality fans, considering how much you blew on the fans, you won't have money for a great processor, so it's not like it's going to thermal throttle anyway. So first piece of advice, keep the bling down. If you have the budget for it, if you are satisfied with the performance that you have already, then by all means do it. Otherwise, just stick to regular fans. If you are very constricted, then choose a case that comes with included fans already that are sufficient for the airflow that your PC is going to have. And that's going to save you a whole lot in the long run. You can always replace it later on. It's cheaper and easier to replace fans or replace a case than it is to replace a motherboard and a CPU or a GPU. So stick to the performance first and leave the bling for later. Our number 2 item is a bit of a double-edged sword. I'm going to be talking about PSUs. Now, you should not skimp out on the PSU by buying some unreliable, unknown brand PSU that nobody ever uses, that the reviews are like 1 star, and you're not going to be paying $50 for a PSU that is going to explode within a year or so. That's not what I'm saying when I'm telling you should kind of save some money on the PSU, but there are a few points that you can save on a PSU that don't necessarily affect the reliability of it. First one is obviously kind of ties in with the blingy stuff that I just mentioned. The ones that have like a wattage counter on the side, RGB fans, that sort of thing. You can very easily do without that, and that alone is probably going to save you quite a lot. Other thing that you can save is going with a non-modular one in place of modular. That's going to probably save you 15 to 20 bucks right there. And while not being essential, it's a nice thing to have, a modular PSU that you can remove cables if you don't need them. But if you really are constricted, then there's something to look at. Other thing that a lot of people do is getting way too beefy PSUs for the builds that they have. If you are running a 3600 and let's say a 5700 as a graphics card, you're not going to need a 1000 watt PSU or 1500 watt PSU. So why pay the extra for that? Pick a PSU that fits your needs. By all means, leave some leeway for future upgrades, but don't go complete full-on overkill if you don't need to. Do make sure to buy from a reliable brand so that your PSU will last you for years to come, basically, but don't go overboard. Point number 3 is actually mixing and matching the key components properly. This is to say things like motherboard, CPU, GPU, memory. Make sure they are a decent fit for each other. Now, an argument can be made for future-proofing in some cases, in other cases, not so much. Let's say that you are playing at 1080p. Going with 2080 or 2080 Ti would be a waste. Even the 2070 would be probably a waste at 1080p unless you are planning to upgrade your monitor in the near future to play at higher resolutions. So pick something fitting for the resolution you are playing at. Similarly, getting like, let's say, a 93 90 getting like a 93 with a 2080 Ti is a complete waste. It's not going to be able to keep up. And at the same in the same logic, if you get a 9900 KS or a 3900X, then you're not gonna pair it with 1060 or with Polaris 580 or something, because then you are basically wasting all the potential of your CPU. So make sure that parts are kind of on the same tier level in terms of actual functionality and performance. Obviously, there are caveats. You might argue that if you want to play CSGO at 400 or 500 FPS. You don't need a great graphics cards, but you do need a good processor to drive those frames. Those are edge case. I see those as edge cases. That's more something that the competitive gamer would care about, and not so much the general public that is the majority of the people that might be watching this video. So yeah, consider that an edge case, if you will. Things like the memory, like I mentioned, are also worth a mention in this particular item, because if you are running Intel, it is kind of a waste of money to go with great memory, great timings. If you are not really playing with a big budget, you can go a little bit lower. Argument can be made for Ryzen CPUs that kind of like fast memory, but still, if you are budget constricted, it is okay to be a little bit lower. Go for 3200 with good timings instead of going for 3600 with CL16 or something. You probably will not be seeing a massive difference in day-to-day performance, and it might save you to apply the money you just saved in something else. Number 4, the storage. NVMe is a big hit lately, and flash drives and SSD drives are definitely a very big improvement over spinning HDD platters. However, don't get carried away. It's kind of counterproductive to skimp out on other parts of your system to go and buy a 1TB SSD or 2TB or whatever, just so you can have fast storage. Do make sure that you have at least a SATA SSD on your setup. For boot reasons, it's pretty much mandatory these days to have Windows on an SSD if you want any sort of good experience on the computer. So as long as you do have an SSD for Windows, maybe perhaps for a game or two that you play the most and you want faster load times with, that's fine. But don't go overboard unless you have a big budget. Just get let's say 500 GB SATA SSD. You won't notice a big difference on a day-to-day basis between a SATA and an M.2 SSD, to be quite honest, unless you really want the best of the best. So get a SATA SSD, 500 gigs or something, slap Windows in there, slap your couple most played games and applications, and then just get a bigger HDD for, let's say, your Steam library that you touch once every 3 years, movies and TV series and stuff like that you might want to download or watch or something. It'll be more than enough, it'll be fine, and it will save you the cost of bigger SSD drives. Point number 5 is not strictly related to the PC setup, but well, kind of revolves around it. Peripherals, mice, keyboard, all that sort of stuff, microphones, webcams, you name it. Usually you can save quite a bit in there. For example, take a look at my HyperX, for example. Do you really care that it has a glowing logo on the side? I don't. I mean, I'm happy with them, it's just an example. I'm pretty happy with them, quality is great, but usually when things are marketed as gaming, they usually carry a premium because they usually, well, kind of touches once again on the bling segment that I mentioned at the start. They will usually have different design lines and LEDs and all that sort of thing that usually are not great. I recently saw some article about gaming chairs with RGB LEDs on the chair. That kind of thing you can save a lot of. Not saying that you guys are thinking of getting bright chairs, but mice and keyboard, for example, stick to a wired mice and keyboard unless you really are into the wireless thing. They usually cost less, and yeah, granted, less wires, but anyway, they usually cost less. Keyboards are also something that you can save on if you are willing to invest on other parts of the system. Like, do you really need a mechanical keyboard? Does it really need to have integrated RGB synced with your motherboard and X Y or Z amount of extra keys and all that sort of thing. Those are things that you definitely can save on. Granted, this is a bit of personal point because some people might just see those extra features as essential, especially extra mouse buttons, that sort of thing. Some people might see that as essential and they might really want that. I am personally fine without, so that has a bit less value to me, I suppose. But still, the point remains that that's something that you can save some money on to then apply to the rest of your system. Now, these have been the most obvious 5 things that I thought of when thinking how can you possibly save money on some parts of your system to apply to do others. But the general point of this video is really don't go splurging on non-essential stuff until you are happy with the performance of the build you are planning. Granted, there are exceptions. If you are planning to start with a 3600 AMD Ryzen chip right now, but are planning to upgrade in the future to a 4th generation Ryzen, then it does pay to get a beefier motherboard that will have better VRMs, be able to run those chips without any problems. But you know, that's kind of an exception. If you're planning to build in the now, for now, then that's not really the point of this video. There are always exceptions to any rule, but the rule stands. Until you are happy with your performance, don't go splurging on RGB fans and 2TB NVMe drives and RGB gaming chairs. So yeah, hope this has been helpful to you guys. It was not concrete information, but just some things to think about when planning your next build. And when you go to the part picker list and you're $100 over budget, then yeah, might be some time to remove some of RGB in there, kind of skimp out on a little on the storage, and you know, maybe then you'll have the budget that you need and you'll have the gaming PC that you're actually hoping for. So hope you guys have enjoyed the video. Let me know what you think, if there are any other ways to actually meet your budget. What are your guidelines when putting a build together? Let me know down in the comments, so I'll be able to do that next time around as well. Check our other videos, consider subscribing to get some more content with better quality and also help us grow in the future. That's the best way that you can help us right now. So hope I'll see you in the next video and have fun in the meantime.